My name is John Paul Christie. I'm the Senior Director of U.S. Programs at the American Council of Learned Societies, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this informational webinar about the ACLS Fellowship Program. This is our brief agenda for today. I'll be providing a quick overview of ACLS, an overview of the ACLS Fellowship Program and its application components, reviewing some tips for creating an effective application, and then we'll be turning to the Q&A so that I can answer your questions with whatever time is remaining. To start with ACLS, we are a private nonprofit organization. We are just over 100 years old, founded in 1919. Our headquarters are in New York City. We are a federation of 79 scholarly societies. That includes major disciplines and the humanities and interpretive social sciences, but it also includes many sub-disciplines and interdisciplinary fields as well. I encourage you to go to our website at www.acls.org to review our membership list, to view which learned societies are our members. I think you'll see that our goal is to be as broadly encompassing of the humanities and interpretive social sciences as we can be. And from our mission statement, we work with the learned societies and our fellowship and grant programs in a sort of two-pronged way to advance the humanities and tackle issues of shared concern. As you can see, we are interested in the creation and circulation of knowledge that advances understanding of humanity and human endeavors in the past, present, and future. Our fellowship and grant programs, that's what we're here to talk about today, in particular the ACLS Central Fellowship Program, but we run a number of fellowship and grant competitions every year. That list is evolving each year, so it's important to stay connected with us at ACLS and to see what new opportunities are arising. This year, we are offering 13 fellowship and grant programs. We are on track this year to provide approximately $27 million in support to nearly 400 awardees, and those awardees are selected from between 3,000 and 4,500 applications every year. It can fluctuate based on the kinds of opportunities we are offering each year, but the average is around 4,000 applications every year. And we work with over 600 peer reviewers in the last competition year. I think it's probably pretty self-explanatory, this next slide, for folks who are joining us, but I think it's important to go over some of the aspects of why we are mounting this large-scale peer review process and why we think that it's valuable for people to engage with us in the Central ACLS Fellowship Program and our other programs. Obviously, one of the key reasons for applying is to secure funding for your research project. And we'll talk about the range of funding opportunities available in a moment. But we also see several other benefits to engaging in this national peer review process. One of them is the application process lends itself to the refinement of arguments and ideas. What we ask you to do in the course of putting together a fellowship or grant application is to crystallize some arguments, crystallize the ideas you might be working on, and sort of take a snapshot of them and make the case for them. So we think that this has some important benefits to the refinement of that project. We also run largely interdisciplinary peer review processes. So we are asking you also to think about the translation of your ideas and to think about their humanistic context. And then ultimately, we do see the value every year in peer review for the opportunity for you to stake a claim to certain ideas, stake a claim to your projects, and also to get feedback on your project from our peer review process. You will likely be engaging with scholars who are not close to you, who may not be familiar with your work, And therefore, this is a way for you to engage with the broader scholarly community and to get feedback on your project, and often some constructive ideas on how to refine or improve it. Very briefly, I wanted to go through the ACLS Fellowship and Grant programs that we offer. They cut across career stages and modalities of research. We offer programs that are targeted toward the pre-doctoral stage, the dissertation stage of research. Our new Mellon ACLS Dissertation Innovation Fellowship is one of those opportunities, as is the Luce ACLS Dissertation Fellowship in American Art. We offer opportunities for recent PhDs, the ACLS Leading Edge Fellowship, which connects early career PhDs with opportunities to partner with social justice organizations to put their humanistic training and capacities into the service of really dynamic and impactful organizations working around the country. Our Getty ACLS Postdoctoral Fellowship in the History of Art, that's a global program. We have special emphases in China studies, in Buddhist studies, which offers a suite of opportunities as well, fellowship and grant opportunities as well. And we offer team-based grant programs as well, like our digital justice grants or our grants in religion, journalism, and international affairs. So we offer a variety of opportunities for people to do work that is that might be considered core, traditional monographic research or article-based research, to do work that is publicly engaged and community engaged, to do work that is in the digital sphere, or work that is crossing into media engagement as well. But we're here to talk in particular about the ACLS Fellowship Program, which is the program that is our oldest fellowship program. It is the most capacious in terms of the kinds of research, the kinds of fields that it encompasses, and the people that we work with every year in this program. So we call this our central program internally because it is funded by our endowment and is central to a lot of the program design for many of our programs. We will offer in the 2022-23 competition, this current competition year, 60 awards, and many of those, that roster of 60 awards will include many named awards as well, meaning special awards that have been endowed or semi-endowed by generous donors, funders, supporters of ACLS in particular areas of research. So we offer those typically every year. These fellowships provide support for 6 to 12 months of work on a major scholarly project. What that scholarly project looks like can vary. This is not solely designated for monographic book projects, though we certainly support a lot of those. We are open, depending on the currency in your field, that you may be working on articles or a significant article. You might be working on a publicly engaged project or a community engaged project or a digital resource. All of these are welcome in the ACLS Fellowship Program, and we recruit peer reviewers every year, a large number of peer reviewers every year who are adept at these kinds of scholarship, at the many vibrant kinds of humanities scholarship that scholars are pursuing in the academy and beyond. And so we welcome projects of every shape. We also welcome projects at every stage of development. And this doesn't have to be just for write-up. This could be for doing exploratory research. This could be for post-exploratory or archival research, doing some follow-up research that is solidifying a project or bringing a project to completion. It'll be important for you to talk exactly about what stage you are in the application process, and we'll talk about that in the tips section later, and to make a really strong claim about how you are managing this project and where this support is falling in the sometimes very long arc of a humanities research project. The awards are typically range between $30,000 and $60,000 a year. That's $5,000 per month. We offer award supplements for scholars who are not working on the tenure track, and for scholars who do not hold academic positions, independent scholars, of $7,500 in addition to the maximum award that they are asking for, between 6 and 12 months. And while I really strongly encourage you to look at our competition page for the complete eligibility criteria, the basics are here, that we are in particular supporting in most recent years early career untenured scholars with this program. And so the most important thing for you to note here is that you must have earned the PhD within 8 years of the application deadline, and you may not hold a tenured position. So this is a criterion that evolves over time. Our other eligibility criteria also evolve, and I really encourage you to review our website. And if you have questions about exactly where you fall in terms of our eligibility window, that you write to us at fellowships@acls.org. Most important piece of information on this page is the deadline, that is September 28 at 9 p.m. EDT. This is we ask for all applications to be submitted electronically, and that is a firm deadline. Unfortunately, given the very compressed timeline we have for a multi-stage peer review process, we are unable to offer extensions to that deadline. Once you submit an application, it goes through, as I mentioned, a multi-stage peer review process, and we're going to look at that now so that we can show you a little bit behind the scenes about what happens once you press submit. But before we do that, I just want to put in big bold letters here that while we are supporting, in many cases, very complex, sophisticated scholarly research, this kind of writing is distinct from academic writing in important ways. And we'll talk about that as we move through the tips section of this presentation. But grant writing is its own thing. And it is a skill, and it's one that does improve with practice. This is one reason that peer review and asking for and getting provided feedback is important. But we see this very much as a team sport in many ways, and we hope that you will follow some of our tips for strengthening your application in ways that can make it a better fit for our program and a stronger one in terms of communicating to the key audiences that you need to convince to receive one of our fellowships. These are the basic application components that our Central ACLS Fellowship requires. When you log in to our online fellowship application portal, you'll be asked to put in some basic information, some contact information, education information. We use that to be able to contact you in the course of the fellowship competition, but also to understand where you stand in terms of our eligibility criteria. So we know what your background is, when you earned your PhD, et cetera. Then you move into a section where you are inputting information about your project, including the title and abstract of your project. We also asked for a second abstract because this is an interdisciplinary peer review process that we call the broad humanistic significance statement. And that's something that is separate, distinct from the abstract. It is something that you want to think through in terms of the audiences that you're going to be engaging with. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but we are really eager to help you with these different sections, to give you the space, to give you the opportunities to communicate to the different scholarly audiences that are going to be evaluating your application. We also ask you to upload a proposal, and that's 5 pages, double-spaced in that section. Please do pay attention to the formatting requirements throughout. They're very clearly spelled out in our portal, but also on our competition page. That's something that you do not want to mess around with. We also ask you for a brief bibliography. If you'd like, you can upload a brief list of publications. We ask you to submit a one-page statement that's sort of detailing your, it's a personal statement that helps you detail your intellectual trajectory, how these particular questions, how you're seeing the intersection of your identity and your education, your career trajectory, and the intellectual stakes of your project. And then you are asked to submit a short writing sample, and that's 5 pages, single or double space. So most people choose to do single spaced here to give themselves a little bit more room, but that is a key component that we added a few years back that allows you to demonstrate, regardless of your publication track record, or regardless of how long ago you earned your, or how recently you earned your PhD, to show that you have the capacity to carry out, to put into action the ideas that you've put in your proposal. So this is something that could have been published. It doesn't have to have been published. It could be a work in progress. We do allow you to write a short introduction explaining it's the context of the writing sample and how it does connect to the work you're going to be proposing to do on the fellowship term. So with this in mind, it's really important to read ACLS's website, to follow all of our instructions in terms of our the eligibility criteria, in terms of the formatting, and to log into our application portal early so that you can get a sense of all the different sections that are required as part of the application. This section here, the title, abstract, and broad humanistic significance, the title and these 2 abstracts, the first one describing the project, the second describing how it fits into this broader humanistic context. This is in many ways your first impression with our peer reviewers. So I especially want to note that you should not skimp on this or save these to the last minute. When our reviewers open up your dossier, this is the first thing they see. It's not the information you first filled out in our portal, which was your contact information or your educational background. This is it. And so it's very important to spend some time on this section, because in the course of reading and often rereading your application, this is the portal into your project, and you want to make sure that you're giving it its due consideration. ACLS employs a multi-stage peer review process, as I mentioned, and for this program, as with many of our programs, it follows this sequence. We at ACLS, my colleagues and I, will screen these applications for eligibility and formatting. So if you have submitted a writing sample that's 7 pages instead of 5 pages, your application will be pulled and deemed ineligible. So please do follow those eligibility requirements and follow those formatting requirements very carefully. Our goal is to get as many applications to our peer reviewers as possible, and we want to make sure that everybody has the same amount of real estate to make the case for their projects. So we are only, our goal here is only to take out the ones that are over the line. Now, we understand as you're writing in a Word document and uploading it and converting it to a PDF, every once in a while, a 5-page document, when converting it to a PDF, turns into 5.2 pages or 5.25 pages. Those little overages, we're used to seeing that. We know that that's a hang up. Slight changes like that will not make you ineligible, but do not submit anything that is going far beyond that. We really want these to be in the boundaries of eligibility. That is the gateway moment of the application. The next and really important part is the first round of peer review. And those first round reviewers are likely going to be specialists in your field, or people who are within your discipline. If you are an historian of Latin America, you will have Latin American historians reading your application and making sure that there is someone who is in your particular area, geographic area, time period, reading your file. If you are someone who's doing interdisciplinary work and you say, my application really is a cross between literature and anthropology, we will be combining our review teams to give your application the disciplinary review and interdisciplinary review that you think it merits. So be very careful with how you describe your application. Be very careful in the application with just when you're picking out of our drop-down list which fields it is intervening within. You want to make sure that you are very clear and not making a claim that your work, your trajectory, your bibliography doesn't meet. So please do be careful if you would like to engage in a new field as you're moving forward, but your work doesn't currently do that. Make sure that you're describing it as it stands so that you are getting the correct specialists to read your application. Based on that initial reading of several specialists reading your application materials, we are then taking the top scoring applications, the ones that have the best scores and reviews, and making a cut at that point to the very top. And that's typically between 20 and 30% of the pool, makes it into the finalist round. And those applications then go on to a selection committee that is made up of scholars representing a wide variety of humanistic disciplines. That means that there could be a modern languages scholar, a sociologist, an historian, a musicologist, and an art historian on a panel. And we will make sure that your discipline is represented on that panel if you're going there, so that there's someone on the panel who is within your discipline. But ultimately, the goal here is to have an application that is very clear in explaining the stakes of your research, the stakes of the questions that you're asking to an interdisciplinary audience. So there will be someone within your discipline and someone outside of your discipline, many people outside of your discipline on these selection committee meetings. So really think as you're putting together your proposal about how clear it would be to super intelligent, interested, open-minded people, but people who are not fully versed in all of the stakes of your field. They will rely on the fact that the first round of peer review has that you've gotten through that and that your work is excellent within discipline. They all know that, but you're going to be trying to distinguish yourself in this interdisciplinary competition in the final round to make it very clear what the importance of your work is, what kinds of questions it's answering, and how those questions can be meaningful to people outside of your discipline. With that structure in mind, it is really important to think through the entire application with a view towards that final audience, that selection committee meeting. At ACLS, that interdisciplinary selection committee meeting is their plenipotentiary. They are making the decisions of who is receiving an award. There's no subsequent review after that selection committee meets. There's no a board that reads it after that, or there's no official that is making decisions. Peer review is all of it for us at ACLS. We really are investing a lot in expert peer review, and so you really want to think about that interdisciplinary group as your key audience. And with that in mind, you should really think about the following things as you're putting together your application. As I mentioned before, very important to read through all of the materials on ACLS's website, to follow instructions as closely as possible. And if there's anything that's unclear on our website, to follow up with us and ask. There will be a link to the email hotline, fellowships@acls.org, where questions about eligibility or any aspect of our application process can be answered. It's important to log into the application portal early. For many of our programs, that's especially important because you might have to request a reference letter. For the ACLS fellowship, in this current competition year, we are not accepting reference letters. So no reference letters are required for the Central ACLS Fellowship. For other programs in ACLS this year, there is a reference letter component, but not for this year. This is something that evolves every year, and I want to stress that it's something that we are actively monitoring to think through the implications of reference letters in all of our programs. But even if you don't have to request a reference letter and log in early to do that, it is really important to log in, make sure that you've read through all of the areas that are required in an application, and that you know that it's not just an abstract, that there's this second broad humanistic significance statement that you don't want to leave to the end. And that is really important. I will say that a pet peeve of many reviewers, I've heard this from first round reviewers and from second round reviewers, is when someone just cuts and pastes the first paragraph of their proposal into the abstract or into the broad humanistic significance, a clear sign that they've waited until the last minute. That is, to them, fairly wasteful, meaning that you have an opportunity to contextualize, to provide a refraction of your project or your argument in the abstract and broad humanistic significance, something that's an additive component to the proposal, and you didn't take advantage of it. So please do make sure that you are paying close attention to those key components. This is a project, not just an idea. So you might have some really fascinating questions, some really interesting material that you've uncovered, but our peer reviewers are dealing with way too many fascinating questions, way too many fascinating problems to give all of them an award. And what can distinguish an application is to really think about this in terms of the research project. How is this fellowship application going to advance a particular project, move it closer to its completion? It does not have to be completed during the fellowship term. We make that very clear to our peer reviewers that this program supports applications for research at every stage of development. That being said, you really want to make sure that you, when you're proposing something, that there's enough of a there, that you are very clear in mapping out exactly what you're going to be doing over the course of the fellowship term, whether it's 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, that you are showing that you are going to be spending that time effectively. Your questions, your project, your ideas, the period and area that you're working on might be totally innovative, fascinating, really compelling. But what's going to make it especially compelling when you're competing against other really interesting ideas and questions is to show that you know how to hit the ground running with this fellowship term, that you're going to be using this time, these scarce resources. We can only award 60 fellowships in this competition, that you're going to be using those as effectively as possible. So think that through. You might want to think about a paragraph that is basically a timeline, or including a sort of schematic timeline in your proposal to describe what you're going to be accomplishing and when and how you're going to be doing it. And so not just thinking about how you're going to be spending the time, but that you've thought through what it's going to take to make something happen. That you know that you can get access to archival materials that you want to pursue, that or review and investigate, that you know that you can make the claims that you want to do, or to bring together the materials or the questions that you want to bring together, if that requires going to a specialized research archive, if that requires spending time in the field, that you have that totally set, that the reviewers, as they're reading through this application, can think to themselves, this person is going to pursue these really interesting questions, and they have the basics all laid out. So whether that's at the beginning, middle, or end. And if you were proposing research that is close to the beginning stage of a project, you should be thinking about what's going to be happening after the fellowship year as well. How long is it going to take for you to complete this research? How long do you think it might take you to write it up? Would you be doing that over summers? Are you going to be seeking a course release to do that during the year? Are you going to be pursuing that through participating in a workshop at your college, university, at your museum, to collaboratively write up or hold yourself accountable to move through a project? And then how is this work going to be disseminated? We are interested not just in you producing the work, but thinking through exactly how this work is going to circulate, how it's going to get out there and influence the scholarly conversations around your particular questions, around the problems that you're trying to engage. With that, it's very important to think about substantiating claims as much as you can in your proposal, balancing theory and evidence. You do not want to overwhelm the application with just a case that has no sort of theoretical framing to it. But you want to make sure that if you are relying strongly on particular theoretical frameworks, that you are showing exactly how you think that's going to play out, with perhaps an initial case or something that a phenomenon that inspired these questions to begin with. That can be really important for the reviewers to see exactly how you're applying your methodologies, how you're thinking through the theoretical aspects of your proposal, of your research in the project. And at all times, it's really important to consider the stakes of your research. What kinds of questions are you trying to answer? What are the stakes of those questions? How are they helping us see a particular phenomenon, or a particular set of phenomena, or a period, or visual media differently? That can be really important to explain what this gets us. When completing this research, where does it take us? What does it allow us to do differently? How does it allow us to see things differently? That can be really important, so that if you're speaking to an interdisciplinary audience, you're able to connect with them and have them understand why these questions would matter to them. Be very clear in your writing and avoid jargon. This is perhaps one of the biggest pet peeves of our peer reviewers, technical language that goes undefined or unexplained. So please do, if you have to use specialized technical language or terminology, please do define significant terms if you're going to be using them throughout your application. It's best to try to avoid jargon if you can. We all know that it's important, that it's there for a reason, that it does save time within specialized disciplinary conversations, but you really want to make sure that you are not alienating your interdisciplinary audience. So either avoid it or define it very clearly, so that you can use it throughout without mystifying the subject. That's just a point for all of these points above, is just to know your audiences, to think about communicating eventually to that final review committee that's interdisciplinary. I think one of the best ways to test this is to think about taking your materials and testing it with a sample audience. That could be someone, a colleague of yours, that could be a friend, someone who might be outside of your discipline too, and who could read through your materials and ask you questions about terms you might have left undefined, or arguments that might be less than clear. You want them to be able to grasp the stakes of your project, and that's a good question to ask them if they're reading your proposal to help reframe, restate the stakes of your project. And then ultimately you need to apply. This is something that we really encourage you to think about as a process that can use refinement over time. So it can use refinement before you apply. We hope that if you do apply, and whether you're successful or not, that you ask for feedback on your application, which is always geared towards not necessarily making it possible for you to revise and resubmit and get accepted in a future year. That may happen, but this is really about making your proposal stronger, thinking through some of the key aspects of your project. A few other quick tips. We really want you to take advantage of the resources we have available online. And one of those, in addition to the competition page, ACLS has a frequently asked questions section for all of our fellowship and grant competitions. The FAQ is full of terrific information, and it's all been asked by applicants and reviewers in the past. If you have a question, if you feel like you can't find something on the competition page, I strongly encourage you to read the FAQ before writing to the fellowships@acls.org email address. Of course, sometimes you might miss something, and you're welcome to write to us. But if it's in the FAQ, we will probably be cutting and pasting from the FAQ and replying with that standardized language for the sake of clarity, and directing you back to the FAQ for further questions. So that's totally, there's no penalty to asking a question, but we really want to make sure that you see the resources that are available there, and you might find your question answered very quickly as you go down the list of FAQ. Webinars like these can be really important. We are hosting a series of them. Started this summer with our dissertation innovation fellowships, but we'll be hosting another one of these for the Central ACLS Fellowship Competition next Tuesday. There will be other fellowship webinars for the Getty Fellowship, for the Luce ACLS American Art Fellowship. So please do keep an eye out for the resources that we make available in terms of these informational webinars. I encourage you to take a look at the profiles of fellows and the abstracts of recently funded projects. This is something that if you're thinking, how do I frame an abstract so that it is clearly conveying the stakes of a project? This is something that we make available for all of our funded projects, and it's something that you can peruse through our website. You can search for different topics. You can search for people from your institution, your PhD institution. You can see who has been funded and what kinds of projects we've funded. I'll just stress that our goal over time is to be as comprehensive as possible and to welcome all kinds of humanistic scholarship. Some years there may be more of one field than another, just given the changes in the application field. So please do look at multiple years of these fellows and grantees on our website so that you can take a look at what we've funded over the recent 5 years, for instance. We also provide short essays on writing ACLS fellowship applications, and those are, I think that the last one that was on there is an essay by a former colleague of ours, Tina Gillis, who wrote an essay on writing or on ACLS fellowships. That is perhaps the least read piece of literature on our website, and it's one that deserves your full attention. So please do. I believe you'd have to scroll to the bottom of our competition page to find the related documents, and that is one that will be there. And I encourage you, it's a 6-page essay. It's really terrific and offers different ways of trying to make this case for the stakes of your particular project. Here's an example of some of our recent awardees pages, so you can go through and see what the project title was, what their institutional affiliation is, you can see just from this snippet, 1/10 of our fellowship awardees from last year, that we're funding projects across all geographic areas, across different times, from the ancient world to the contemporary, in different languages. We're really open to every kind of approach to advancing the humanities and advancing humanistic knowledge. And that is why we really encourage you, regardless of your field, to think of ACLS as a place for your research. If you click on the name of one of those cards of a recent awardee, you can see what their project title is and read their abstract as well. This is really important for you to be able to access some examples of successful abstracts that have clearly conveyed the relevance of the project to the peer reviewers. Here's that the first page of that essay that I mentioned by Tina Gillis on writing proposals for ACLS fellowship competitions. Our one final resource here is we have a running list on our website of deadlines for applications, of upcoming deadlines. And we encourage you to keep an eye on that competitions and deadlines page, as sometimes programs are added mid-year. We are constantly updating this, but this allows you to go to one page, it's called competitions and deadlines, and be able to click through to our various programs and read through the requirements, read through the goals of the fellowship program, so you can see if it matches up with your own research interests. And then finally, I've mentioned many times that we have a terrific team working together that is answering the fellowships at acls.org email inbox. So if you have questions that are not answered on our website, I really encourage you to use that email address. I will say that the closer you get to the deadline, the more inquiries that we're fielding. So please do read through the materials at your earliest convenience. And if you have questions about your eligibility or about an application component, please send that in as soon as you can, because as we get closer to the deadline, the day before the deadline, if you submit a question, it may be that we won't be able to get you an answer before the very last minute. And we want to make sure that we're answering your questions and making it possible for you to apply for every candidate. And so the way that you can help us do that is to review the materials at your earliest convenience. We're also providing updates about our new programs, about upcoming webinars on our Twitter account at ACLS 1919, the year that we were founded. And I encourage you to follow us on Twitter so that you can get the benefit of that news feed of new opportunities. Thank you again for joining us. On behalf of all of us here at ACLS, I wish you the best of luck on your application.